great Canadian talk show.
And now, let's get right down to business with Marty Gold.
Anyways, this, as I said, parallels with other issues that politicians are throwing lots of money at. Province throwing another $58 million to create 700 social housing spaces, which isn't quite true from what I read, because it looks like some of the money creates a space and other of the money just pays rent for you to find a place, and includes Brandon, which is good to see because the homeless shelter there is far overrun, as I understand it. This coming through the Families Minister Rochelle Squires, increasing the basic needs budget for people on employment income assistance and the index rates for rent assist. Still not going to keep up with what the market rents are. Training, shelter support, de-escalation of this and that. The focus is based on the knowledge shared by service providers, Indigenous leaders, and people with lived experience. Mayor Gillingham called the approach a proven successful model. Homelessness and addiction are two of the biggest issues facing Winnipeg today. The housing-first approach, combined with on-site wraparound services, can enhance quality of life and healthcare outcomes. Kenny, remember you saw earlier I sent you an audio clip to pull?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to be moving into that.
Okay.
In a minute. While Mayor Gillingham and the Families Minister Squires, while they think that this extra $57 million, which I think on top of another 70-something million that was already committed, it's 126 or something million total, for training and more money for rent, and I think 300 maybe new actual apartment living units, maybe. Not everybody's quite as jumping up and down with joy about this plan. Marion Willis, founder of St. Boniface Street Links, here's the news story, described her reaction to the announcement as cautiously rather optimistic. I'll try it again. Cautiously optimistic, but there's little addressing what she says are the root causes of homelessness. It was a blue sky kind of announcement, and I'd like to see what the plan looks like. Kenny, can you play that audio right now? This, I think, is from Global TV.
Yep. Here it goes.
This is Marion Willis, the founder and executive director of St. Boniface Street Links. Many, many years of experience with street-involved people, and through Moorburg House has proven that she has methods that do work in getting people back onto the straight and narrow and becoming productive, sober members of society. Let's hear from Marion Willis right now.
I was just really hoping that we'd hear a little bit more about mental health and addictions, a little bit more about, the violence in the city, an unprecedented homicide rate this past year, and unprecedented number of people 2 years in a row dying of opioid overdose deaths. I have every reason to believe that this year it's not going to improve. It may be another unprecedented record, right? So, for me, I look at that and I say, well, we've had a 7.5-year drug crisis now. That's actually what's wrong right across the country. You'll find that there's escalating numbers of people spiraling into homelessness. And it is because of that, right? And so I would like to see strategies focus a little bit more on addressing sort of that root cause and recognizing the level of post-pandemic stress that this province and probably every province across this country is faced with right now. That's why you're seeing, the increase in all those poor social stats.
So you heard Marion Willis, who's fought with the system since the late 1980s, and look what she said was missing from this announcement. And again, this is politicians throwing around gazillions of dollars. The Conservatives, of course, going into an election year. At least they're spending money, and there is a need for more training. There is a need for more spaces. But this is all very bureaucrat heavy, these approaches, in my opinion. I think Marion Willis has a similar point of view. She talked about the violence in the city, the record homicide rates, the record opioid deaths. She heard nothing about how they're going to address that, and that, she says, is what drives homelessness. And she made a point you didn't hear in that audio clip, but further in that interview with Global, that, we see the medicine wheel here in the brochure, or the announcement, right? The brochure materials or whatever, the handouts. And that represents, from Indigenous culture, all four races. And she made the point that especially the post-pandemic stress, the addictions that send people into a spiral, that's not how should I put this, Kenny? That's not a matter of faith and culture, and it's not a matter where it's, one particular segment of society affected by that. It's all segments, and the homelessness initiatives and the Homelessness Winnipeg describes themselves as an Indigenous organization. And so Marion's saying that this has to be looked at to encompass everybody, and this specific focus on one segment of society is detrimental when the common causes, the common root causes, in many cases, the opioids leading to addiction, leading to losing your job, not being able to hold a job, leading to becoming homeless, that the drugs don't care if you're, the drugs don't care if you're Cree, they don't care if you're Irish, they don't care if you're from Africa, they don't care if you're from China, they don't care. Here, get hooked. Good luck. So she made some really important points that when they say we're going to get to the root causes, and they're always looked at as like social issues and colonization, all this other, no. That's not where it's at. That's what Marion is saying, and I agree with her. And I think that she makes a good point. All members of society have to be protected and encompassed by these new policies and by this spending. And by their own words, we see these politicians, again, instead of doing the right thing, it's like a radio tuner. They're a little off frequency there. I guess because to actually tune in might, make somebody uncomfortable, because then you have to actually face what's going on in our community with fentanyl, which then leads you back to a zillion free needles and nobody worried about how they're being picked up. And one thing we've seen in Winnipeg, the more free needles you hand out, the more people seem to use them. We're not seeing evidence that whatever wraparound services are coming with free needle programs, that it's working. Where's the treatment? And that's something in which, at least I guess it's Pierre Poilievre has said, well, we believe in treatment. And when people talk about Portugal, the Portuguese model, well, guess what? Portugal's model wasn't like hand everybody drugs. It was, no, you're going to treatment. So Marion Willis, I don't know that she's a voice in the wilderness per se. I don't agree with Marion about everything. We've certainly had some animated conversation in the past, but I give credit to Global TV for putting her on and allowing her to give a contrary point of view, considering that people like Jason Whitford of End Homeless Winnipeg, it seems like what he's focused on is, well, this is money that goes towards reconciliation. Like, well, it's like everybody's taking their piece of the action off the top, and what ends up actually going to resolving the root causes. And there's no question. And the violence, the fact she mentioned the violence, I give her credit, because the violence affects, there are people that become homeless or, in between and sleep rough or whatever, and they are very meek. There are some that, that can change if they get into substances or, go on a drinking binge or something. I know this firsthand from the hotel business, from the cab business and such things. But they aren't looking for trouble. The homeless people in St. Boniface are almost all non-violent, because they fled the violent homeless communities in especially a downtown area, Fort Rouge, the West End. Nobody ever talks about these nuances and what's going on out there. None of these government officials, I'm saying. Marion Willis does, and it's to her credit and to the credit of Global News that they gave her that time to say that this might be, a little bit pie in the sky.
The Great Canadian Talk Show is brought to you by The Hive Hair Company. From classic to funky, the styles of your life are at The Hive, in the heart of the Osborne Village at 175 Osborne. Call 452-4483 or online, thehivehaircompany.com.
On CBC, final remark about our esteemed mayor, leaning on an analogy he said he often uses, Gillingham compared a one-person kayak in the Red River to a dragon boat fueled by a team. We need to be a dragon boat to tackle this.
Oh my God.
I'm not saying he doesn't say it, but I mean, he's never said it to me.
What about in the wintertime? What do we gotta do then?
Okay. Comment from a listener.
That's the first stupid thing I think I've heard him say, to be honest.
I generally like them, but
listen, I don't want to dive into the budget today. Folks, it's been a difficult weekend, and there's more city budget and stuff. And generally, we've had very little to say about Mayor Gillingham. I mean, he hasn't screwed things up. We're going to do one more thing about City Hall here. But between this committee and not addressing what Marion said about how do you address the violence among the people that are homeless, that are committing violent acts, and listen, that is get them off the streets one way or the other. You've got to get them into a situation where they can't harm other people. And a lot of times this root causes stuff is like, do we really want to turn into what we've seen happen in places like San Francisco, where the cities are just overwhelmed by violent derelicts?
But we can poop wherever we want. We don't need those, Marty. Yeah, we don't need those washrooms. We should turn to San Francisco.
Okay.
We don't need the washrooms.
One last thing. I'm Kenny. We're going pretty long here. It's just going to be the one segment today. Yep. I'm foregoing provincial politics as much as I'd like to get into ER deaths, the ER death, and my own experiences in watching what they did with Brian Sinclair. I'm waiting for them to say that they lost the chart is the bottom line on that one. And the free press attacking the government with absurd concepts that they never would attack the NDP with. And for all the talk in the free press, I'll just sort of bridge this way. For all talk in the free press about recruiting nurses and staffing shortage and everything else, the things that have affected it, the one thing the free press never mentions, one of the things that has affected staffing shortages in the healthcare system, vaccine mandates that in other jurisdictions have been reversed or revoked, people got their job, whatever. And here the free press never mentions it because that, of course, would go against their narrative. Anyways, since we're on the subject of violence and city things, free press story, big picture of Scott Gillingham striding past the tables at the Chamber of Commerce. Mayor tackles bus violence. And in his State of the City address, he named 5 routes that are going to be subject to a circulated working document that outlines their plan to establish a city peace officer unit for transit. $5 million set aside in the budget. Routes 11, 15, 16, 18, and 47. I know it sounds like bingo. Now, which routes are those? It's like specifically because people don't necessarily know route numbers. So 11 is Kildonan, down Portage Avenue, and then down Henderson Highway. The 15 is that Sergeant Mountain. 16 is, pretty good, eh? 16 the Osborne, Selkirk Osborne, I think. 18, going by memory here. 16 Selkirk Osborne, the 18. Do I win something if I get this right? The 47 is Region.
A copy of RetroPeg.
What was that?
You win a copy of RetroPeg.
I'll win a copy of RetroPeg. Yeah, exactly. So the Selkirk Osborne, the Mountain route, I'm blanking out on the 18. None of these are surprises in terms of the routes and where the problems are. The 47 is to some people. It goes from the end of Transcona, I mean the east end of Transcona, and I mean all the way at the east end of Transcona, all the way down Pembina Highway. And what almost all of these routes have in common, a number of them anyways, go through the Main Street Strip by City Hall, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
44% of assault and unruly passenger incidents between 2019 and October 2022 were on those 5 routes.
Hey, Marty.
Hey, Kenny.
How if we don't tell the criminals where the police are going to be? Seems like a very poor strategy. We're going to be focusing our criminal fighting on these bus routes.
Well,
just use a different bus route then. If they know that the exact change is, chances are they're going to be pretty good with what bus routes they can use.
Here's where I think you're both right and wrong, Kenny. Some of these people get on the bus. We know they aren't paying. I mean, I can go through a litany of complaints that I picked up this week online. But this is like they're getting on the bus where they live and where they're going to, right?
Mm-hmm.
To and from. So there is probably a criminal element that is looking to just cause trouble and vandalize and assault people. And you're right, though, those kind of, there's a cop on the Selkirk route now, so I guess I'm going to have to take a McPhillips, take a 33 McPhillips Maples.
That's right.
So I can see how this could just, in essence, change the problem or shift the problem.
Move it, shift it, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that point. Yeah, the other one, the 18th is North Main Cordon. So I was right. And we've heard that these troubles on the Cordon bus goes all the way up to Tuxedo, which also has a few lovely residents abusing the transit system from time to time, apparently. So you're right. But what's the details of the plan? And keep in mind, remember, Kenny, we talked on this podcast that there was how many bus drivers in January, a few podcasts ago, have been assaulted just this year, at least 18. 130 attacks on bus drivers in 2022. And this Free Press story, just to mention it, it brings up the life-threatening injury when the fellow was macheted at Ness Avenue and Mount Royal Road, leaves out how that's blocks from Gillingham's home.
And he does like to take the bus.
He made a point of taking the bus, as a matter of fact, on November 9th. Gillingham takes bus to work, commits to address safety issues November 9th. This is a crisis, reported CTV News. Peace officers on transit bus discussing with Winnipeg Mayor and Justminster, November 9th. December, January, February, November, December, January, 90 days to get to the stage where there's some sort of a working paper and they can start time out, and this might be enacted by the end of the year. For a crisis, that system sure doesn't seem to respond very quickly. But there's legal issues, starting with Gillingham wanting limitations. He doesn't want them carrying guns.
Okay.
He doesn't. He wants them. He used a specific term here. They won't be armed but trained in de-escalation. That's how CBC reported. I am specifically avoiding the use of the word transit security force. I won't call them that. They're a transit security team.
Is that really what he said?
He said, noting violent outbursts could mean someone is in need of other social supports. He switches out the word force for team.
Now, that's the dumbest thing he's ever said. Not the Dragon Boat racing stuff. That sounds brilliant compared to that.
I guess in his mind, a force has guns. The union, Chris Scott, I think, is the ATU president. He said the union wants to see less lethal options rather than guns, such as tasers or pepper spray used.
Could they at least have machetes as well?
It would even up the odds.
I think so, right? Fight fire with fire.
You're going to discharge tasers inside buses?
Bear spray inside buses, Marty. That bus will be shut down for months while they try to clean it.
He also wants a security team. This is the union to be given the power to arrest, detain under provincial statutes, or one of the last major cities doesn't have a peace officer program. Let me follow this.
We used to, at the Downtown Watch, when I was first there, we had special constable status, and we were allowed to detain. Well, they were allowed to detain people. So it sounds like they should have kept the Downtown Watch as it was and just transferred onto buses too. But they had to dissolve that because the problem was solved.
CBC quoting Kathy Harapiak, a transit user. She said stronger measures are needed. It should be police officers. Some of the buses are pretty bad on some of the routes. People on drugs in the morning and afternoon, belligerent people. It's not safe. The bus drivers can't even enforce the bus fares, never mind security, making sure their riders are safe. So the flip side of the coin, where you go, we're not going to call it a force, we're going to call it a team. Where does it come from? It comes from the kind of people that get quoted in the media who are soft on crime and perhaps soft between the ears to some extent. If the city of Winnipeg decides to introduce, say, reduced or even free transit like some other cities have, you also reduce a lot of those problems as well. The more people on it, the more taking it, less confrontation with the bus drivers, with the people who can't afford it, a little bit of safety in numbers. What?
The second that you hear there's a machete attack on a bus like that, you're like, maybe I don't need to take that bus.
The more people on it, the more people taking it. that just makes more potential victims in my estimation.
Yeah, they're like, why can't we use some police officers right now until we can transfer it over to the
I think because
security
it's
team?
not legal for them to be on the bus. I think that becomes a provincial thing. It's all the province funds policing, but it doesn't fund policemen and women on buses. It'll be challenging to find a functional transit Winnipeg. Kyle Owens, challenging to find them all. Leave all transit users comfortable riding the bus. What helps some people feel safe can cause feelings of vulnerability for others, he said. Oh, this is why Gillingham uses team instead of force. This is because they're worried about people's feelings, just like the library, and we all saw how that turned out.
Why don't we just call them the Transit Avengers then?
I might have to ask the mayor's office that. Are they going to have a special name, or are they going to be called the Transit Event? How bad is it? How bad is it? Gillingham's also talked about the potential for call buttons on buses as well as video cameras. He was finance chair for most of the last 8 years. He didn't fund call buttons on buses? Oh, yeah, that's right, because they wouldn't even buy them proper radios. This one commenter online said this all seemed to escalate when people were allowed to ride for free, and it seems to be the same trend across the country. What about everyone else? What about our safety? Not sure if security is going to be doing much either with how many violent attacks are done within spitting distance of police headquarters. Now, here's an incident that happened on the 60. They're Confusion Corner waiting for a bus, okay?
Okay.
Waiting for the 60 after getting off the 16, one of those great routes. So here's a transit point involving the 16, which would then keep going straight up, up Osborne, Dakota like that. One of them, there are a couple of people sitting inside the bus shack. It says having fire. They made a fire inside the bus shack. One of them came out asking for a smoke. I don't smoke. I said, no, they tried to snatch my phone and purse. No one helped me out. This is at 8:50 p.m. Luckily, there was a bus driver coming toward me, and he started shouting, hey, buddy, leave the girl alone. Cops are on the way. He repeated his words very loudly. Thank God. That guy left me in a very threatened way. It sounds judgmental, but sometimes it's absolutely obvious who the self-entitled ones are, meaning the people who get on but don't pay. I just feel the ones who pay $100 plus a month for a pass. Is that how much a bus pass is now? $100? And are struggling, yet the druggies get on and urinate on the seats, just my point of view. Now a story about someone. A young lady. Last summer, there was 4 passengers got on the 47 on Regent. And we all remember the stories. Again, we covered on the podcast, I think during the civic election campaign, about the bus shack outside of Kildonan Place on Regent. So what they did was the first guy gets on, he points the person behind him, they point the person behind them, and the fourth person goes, I'm not paying. 4 people walk on the bus for free.
And of course, the bus driver stopped and told them to get off right away, right? And insulted them.
Well, sure they did. Every morning you see cleaning crews of the bus shack in front of City Hall. Mayor Bowman did nothing. Gillingham was at his right hand. Paying passengers in Winnipeg would rather freeze than sit inside these dangerous, smelly, filthy bus shacks. And then also this week, just to end on this, apparently some drivers were telling people, don't bother buying bus fare anymore. In other words, don't buy a Pego card, which is a hint that they think that they may be going on strike. 150 bus drivers have left the profession. I think that's in the last year. Might just be for 2022 to get the 150. And I hear it from anybody I know who takes the bus. What a miserable every day. Somebody's got a justifiable complaint. No, the windows, it's too cold, or he missed my stop, which happens, but like real complaints. Smells, it's filthy. It's
dangerous.
It's dangerous. There's derelicts getting on the bus. There's derelicts around the bus stops. Well, I guess we'll see how Mayor Gillingham envisions his crack security team is going to deal with it.
In a year, Marty. In a year, not.
Yes, by the end of the year. Yeah, big comfort to everybody who's suffering now. Kenny, one other thing.
Okay.
The March 1st in the afternoon, Fort and Graham, cops attended. There's 4 adult males had been assaulted. They're between 19 and 23, so they're all young men. Okay. A 22-year-old was charged with assault ×3 and ACBH, assault caused bodily harm. One of the victims, a 20-year-old, was knocked out and lost a tooth, taken to the hospital. This clown fled on foot. He was followed to Main and St. Mary Avenue.
One guy beat up 4 people.
Well, but no, he individually picked off 4 people downtown. It doesn't sound like there was an argument between one guy and 4 guys, and he happened to be a better fighter.
Oh, okay.
The suspect randomly
like,
approached the victims and physically attacked them without provocation. Knew none of them. 22-year-old, assault ×3, knocked somebody out, knocked out their tooth. Could have killed them if they hit their head on the cement. Released on an undertaking, as mandated by the criminal code. I'm just wondering, are we going to find out if he took a bus to get downtown? If he got people as they waited for buses? Just waiting to hear that part to see if that shoe drops on this story or not. Just waiting. Just saying. Item last is because I'm sure we've done enough. All in one float this week, and skipping up most of the provincial stuff. And comment from a listener, a loyal listener, he who ran for city council in St. James, narrowly losing the race to a former city councilor, Kelly Ryback. Send me a comment that makes an interesting point. And again, this is about downtown and how your tax dollars are spent. And 2 years have passed since Center Venture and Downtown Winnipeg Biz began working on a $100,000 report, he says, for the post-COVID downtown strategy. It was painful to watch the update process as city councilors grew frustrated with the lack of detail and action. I should mention that Kelly, following in where my footsteps were in the early and mid-1980s into the 90s, he goes to City Hall regularly, makes presentations to city committees, and sits in, and it does yeoman's work on behalf of the public in the modern era. A throwback to the old days when people kept an eye on City Hall. The federal government, he wrote me, announced $2.5 million for downtown revitalization last year. Almost half it was for a bike lane and a park at Red River College. Yeah, that's the ticket, he says. The yardsticks haven't moved. The problems worsen. Too much activity with no action. Beginning to understand why 61.5% of people don't vote. Well, it's part of the purpose of the Great Canadian Talk Show. To bring you the information, to get you fired up, to make you want to be involved, to make you send an email to your counselor, to your school trustee, to your MLA, to your premier, to your mayor, to your prime minister, for all I care, and we'll get to federal politics one of these days soon. Amazing. We've committed $2.5 million for downtown revitalization. Now, what if they'd have taken the bike lane money in that park? Because Red River College could have easily panhandled for dollars among their donors and paid for that park. Guarantee you they could have. Guarantee you. And they'd have put that $2.5 million towards, I don't know, downtown transit safety. Clean up downtown, clean up the buses that go through that. Hey, you think we would have gotten a bang for our buck that way? Instead, we get to wait another year.
Well, you see, the students at Red River College are usually there for maybe 1 or 2 years, or like 6 months over 5 years. Yeah. So they wouldn't really get to see value for, hiring a security guard for a year down the line. That really doesn't make sense. But a park, I mean, yeah, that's like instant gratification. Some trees and stuff. Cool.
Well, sure. First of all, cut off another roadway that goes east and west between Main Street and Salter, because God knows you don't need people to be able to go east and west through downtown. I realize it doesn't go from Main Street, goes from Princess, but you get the idea. Yeah, I mean, just sure. Beautification.
Well, it's safer than transit.
Can you imagine if we accept that statement as true? Can you imagine that, though? That a park at Elgin and Princess is safer than transit?
I know. It's crazy, but it's true, because you don't hear about people getting chopped up and murdered in that park.
Well, well, there's security. There's always been good security at Red River College.
I lights out.
Amazing. No, but look at what you're saying, Kenny. The cop shop used to be across the street. Now there's no cop shop at Park, and it's safer than the area downtown around the cop shop.
That's right.
We're going to keep shedding light on these subjects, keep holding our elected officials to account, keep an eye on your tax dollars. And it's all done because this is the commitment that we made, that I made many years ago, and then people over the course of a period of time through Kick FM, Shaw TV, other places, have gotten into the field of citizen journalism, worked on these projects, on this kind of news coverage analysis with me, like Spirited Kenny in the modern era. Here with the modern version of what's the best radio in Winnipeg, podcasting, the Great Canadian Talk Show style. Pitch time, you know what it's all about. If you value this, you want to see it continue, you want to help us build towards the provincial election, and we're going to be covering it. We're going to be asking questions. We're going to be getting interviews. We're going to be digging up stories. And there's a story I tried to get for this broadcast, wasn't able to. Apparently there's, I've been tipped off about another scandal involving the police headquarters and one of the contracts from when it was built. And I'm going to try to get those details, and that might be a midweek special if I can put that together. I know some of the facts, I know some of the rumors, and I'm trying to piece it together. Couldn't do it this weekend because of personal factors on both sides of the equation. I'm going to try to put that together. So you know what? We may not be done with the subject of Phil Schiegel yet either.
Oh,
so
pulling that name out from the past, eh?
If that doesn't make a contribution through PayPal worth it, I don't know what does. PayPal or email me, martygoldlive@gmail.com. We'll be back with more next week.